It was nearing the end of a long and exhausting day at the office when my phone rang. I looked down at the caller ID and saw Emma's name flashing on the screen. It was odd for her to call me during work hours, especially since she knew I was buried under deadlines. Still, I answered, hoping she was calling to check in or just to talk like we used to. But when I heard her voice, something was off. The usual warmth wasn't there, and a chill ran through me at the tone in her words. "David," she said, her voice steady, almost cold, "I think it's time we end this. I want a divorce." My heart skipped a beat, and I froze for a moment, struggling to comprehend what she had just said. Divorce? It didn't make sense. We'd had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing to suggest this. Nothing that would warrant a decision this drastic. What? I stammered, my mind racing as I tried to grasp her words. "Why? Emma, are you serious?" "I've thought about this a lot," she replied, her voice distant. I don't want to be with you anymore. It's over." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I could feel my chest tightening as a wave of confusion and shock washed over me. I couldn't understand. Where had this come from? We had our issues, but this? A divorce out of nowhere? She didn't even want to talk about it. "Emma, wait, I began, trying to process what was happening, but she cut me off. "I don't want to discuss it with you right now," she said bluntly. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. If you have any questions, you can speak with him." The line went dead. Just like that. No explanation. No chance to understand what had brought us to this moment. I stood there, staring at my phone, my hand shaking. Divorce. The word kept echoing in my mind, and I couldn't escape it. I'd never seen it coming. I thought we were fine. But now, I was left holding the pieces of a marriage I had believed in. Pieces that no longer fit together. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to collapse, to lose myself in the raw emotion of it all, but I knew I had to act. I couldn't let this break me. Not now. Not when I still had questions, when I still had things I needed to understand. Taking a deep breath, I decided to follow her instructions. I would meet with her lawyer. I had to know why this was happening, and why it felt like I was being left with no answers. The ride home felt like a dream. No, a nightmare. I barely registered the turns, the stoplights, or the familiar streets I had driven down countless times before. Everything around me looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The city moved at its usual pace, oblivious to the fact that my world had just collapsed with a single phone call. When I pulled into the driveway, my hands were still shaking. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to ground myself, trying to push back the crushing sense of loss that threatened to consume me. I had always assumed that if something was wrong, Emma and I would talk about it, work through it together. But she had made a decision without me, as if our marriage was something she could discard like an old piece of clothing. Steeling myself, I finally stepped out of the car and walked into the house. It felt empty, not physically. Her things were still here, the furniture was untouched, the smell of her perfume still lingered in the air. But there was something missing. The energy, the warmth, the sense of belonging I used to feel in this space. It was all gone. I set my briefcase down by the door, moving on autopilot, my body going through the motions while my mind remained stuck in that last conversation. Divorce. I still couldn't believe it. How had it come to this? I walked into the living room and sat down heavily on the couch. The silence pressed against me, deafening in a way I had never noticed before. I glanced at the pictures on the wall. Our wedding photo, a vacation picture from our trip to Italy, a candid shot of us laughing in the kitchen. Memories of a life I thought was still intact. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling sharply. I needed answers. I needed to understand what had gone wrong, why she hadn't talked to me first, why she had blindsided me like this. But Emma wasn't here. She had left me to figure it out on my own. I considered calling her back, demanding an explanation, but I knew it would be pointless. She had made up her mind. Her voice had been final, emotionless. It wasn't a conversation. It was a statement. Frustration bubbled up inside me, mixing with the ache of betrayal. Had I missed the signs? Had she been planning this for weeks? Months? My mind raced through every argument, every cold glance, every moment of distance between us. But none of it had felt like the end. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. I had a choice. I could let this news break me, let it consume me, or I could face it head-on. Emma had made her decision without me, but I still had power over how I handled this. My phone sat on the coffee table, taunting me. I picked it up, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name she had given me. Henry Clark, her lawyer. I clenched my jaw. If Emma wouldn't talk to me, then I would get my answers another way. I pressed the call button, my heart pounding in my chest. A few rings later, a voice answered. Henry Clark's office. How may I help you? I took a breath, forcing my voice to remain steady. My name is David Lopez. I was told to contact Mr. Clark regarding my wife, Emma Lopez. There was a slight pause on the other end, as if the person hesitated before responding. Ah, yes, Mr. Lopez. Please hold for one moment. I waited, my grip tightening around the phone. My mind raced with possibilities. What was she hiding? Why had she rushed into this without warning? And why did I have this sinking feeling that this was only the beginning? The hold music played in my ear, a soulless melody that only heightened the tension building in my chest. I tapped my fingers against my knee, trying to keep my breathing steady. I had no idea what to expect from this meeting. All I knew was that Emma had made it clear. If I wanted answers, I'd have to get them from her lawyer, not her. After what felt like an eternity, a voice came through the line. Mr. Lopez? Yes, I answered immediately. This is Henry Clark. The voice was professional, but had a slight edge to it. I was expecting your call. Can we schedule a meeting for tomorrow morning? I swallowed hard. I'd rather meet today. A pause. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Mr. Lopez. Tomorrow at 10. My office. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't a conversation. It was an instruction, just like Emma's call had been. Fine, I said. I'll be there. The next morning, I stood outside Henry Clark's office building, staring up at the reflective glass windows. I felt like an outsider looking into a world I didn't belong to. I had never needed a lawyer before. I had never imagined I would be standing here, preparing to negotiate the end of my marriage. I took a breath and stepped inside. The air smelled of polished wood and fresh coffee. The receptionist greeted me with a polite but distant smile. Mr. Lopez, Mr. Clark is expecting you. I nodded and followed her down a quiet hallway. She opened a door to a sleek, modern office, and there he was, Henry Clark. The man sitting behind the desk looked polished and calculated, with silver-rimmed glasses and neatly combed dark hair. But as soon as I stepped inside and said my name, something strange happened. His hand, which had been holding a pen, trembled slightly. His jaw tightened as he slowly looked up at me. His face, which had been calm and composed, paled just enough for me to notice. I frowned. Mr. Clark? He blinked rapidly, then straightened in his chair, trying to regain his composure. Yes, please, have a seat. I sat down, my mind racing. What was that reaction? Why did he suddenly look unsettled? Henry cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. I assume Emma informed you about the proceedings. Barely, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She told me to talk to you instead of her. He nodded, flipping through a file. His fingers twitched slightly as he turned the pages. Whatever was in that file had him on edge. This is a straightforward case, Mr. Lopez, he said, his voice measured. Emma is filing for divorce, and we're prepared to discuss the division of assets. Why? I asked bluntly. He looked up. Excuse me? Why is she doing this? My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. I want to know the real reason. She didn't give me one. Henry exhaled and leaned back in his chair. He hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. Emma believes that this is the best course of action for both of you. I stared at him. That wasn't an answer. That was a scripted response. I leaned forward. What aren't you telling me? His fingers twitched again, gripping the edges of the file. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then, for the first time, I saw it. The guilt in his eyes. Something was wrong. Something big. And whatever it was, Henry Clark wasn't sure if he should tell me. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just sat there, watching Henry Clark as his fingers twitched against the edge of my divorce file. His expression was composed, but his body language betrayed him. His hesitation, the way he shifted in his chair, the way he avoided direct eye contact for just a second too long. He was hiding something. I leaned forward, keeping my voice controlled. Mr. Clark, I asked you a simple question. Why is my wife divorcing me? And don't give me another lawyer-approved response. I want the truth. His lips pressed together in a thin line. He tapped his fingers against the desk. Then, with a slow exhale, he removed his glasses and set them down beside the file. Mr. Lopez, he started, his tone cautious. There's something you should know. I waited, my pulse pounding in my ears. There has been a recent development in your financial status, he continued, choosing his words carefully. One that, let's just say, Emma became aware of before you did. A frown tugged at my brow. What are you talking about? He hesitated, but then he opened the file, flipping a few pages forward before sliding a sheet of paper toward me. I glanced down at the document. It looked official, some kind of financial statement, and then I saw the number. $1,513,000. I stared at it. My mind went blank. What is this? I asked slowly, my mouth dry. Henry clasped his hands together. It's your inheritance. I blinked. My what? Your inheritance, he repeated. From a distant relative. A great-uncle, I believe. He passed away recently, and you were named in his will. The funds were just finalized last week. I sat back, feeling as if the room had tilted sideways. Inheritance? $1.5 million? I had never heard of any great-uncle leaving me money. Why hadn't I been informed earlier? As if reading my thoughts, Henry adjusted in his chair. The legal paperwork was still being processed when Emma became aware of it. It appears she had access to some of your mail and financial statements. She filed for divorce shortly after. The words hit me like a slap. She knew. Emma had known about this before I did. And the moment she found out, she decided to leave me. I clenched my jaw, gripping the arms of my chair so tightly my knuckles turned white. The betrayal settled over me like a thick fog. You're telling me my wife filed for divorce because she thought she could get half of this? My voice was lower now, more controlled, but there was a storm brewing inside me. Henry didn't respond immediately. Then, finally, he said, I can't speculate on her motives, but given the timing, it's highly likely. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Of course, that was what this was about. I had spent the last 24 hours questioning everything, wondering where things had gone wrong, believing I had failed in some way. But it had nothing to do with love, nothing to do with our marriage. It was about money. It was always about money. I rubbed my temples, exhaling slowly. My mind was racing. How long had she been planning this? Had she ever really loved me? Or had I just been a placeholder, someone stable and convenient, until something better, something richer, came along? I looked back at Henry, my voice steadier now. What happens next? He shifted in his chair again. Well, Mr. Lopez, if you proceed with a contested divorce, Emma may attempt to claim a portion of your inheritance. However, inheritance laws vary depending on how the assets are classified. If the money is kept separate from marital funds, she may have no legal claim to it. My mind clicked into gear. Separate. That was the key word. I had to act fast. Emma had blindsided me, thinking I would roll over and let her take what she wanted. But she had underestimated me. I wasn't going to be her fool. I wasn't going to let her win. Henry was still watching me carefully. Mr. Lopez, what do you want to do next? I took a deep breath, pushing down the fury simmering beneath my skin. We fight, I said. I left Henry Clark's office with a fire burning in my chest. The air outside was crisp, but it did nothing to cool the rage simmering inside me. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white as I drove home. The reality of Emma's betrayal was settling in, and the more I thought about it, the more disgusted I became. She had known. She had known about the inheritance before I did. And instead of telling me, instead of having a conversation like a decent human being, She had gone behind my back and filed for divorce, thinking she could walk away with half of it. How long had she been planning this? How long had I been living with someone who had been scheming behind my back? By the time I pulled into my driveway, my jaw was clenched so tightly that I thought my teeth might crack. I needed to think. I needed to be smart. If I let my emotions control me, I would lose. I walked into the house, shutting the door behind me, and took a deep breath. The house still smelled like her, like vanilla and jasmine, her favorite scent. But that warmth I used to feel when I stepped inside was gone. The place felt hollow, as if the walls themselves had betrayed me too. I stood in the middle of the living room, my mind racing. Emma wasn't just leaving me. She was trying to rob me. I had two choices. I could let this play out the way she wanted, watch as she took a chunk of money that she never earned, or I could take control. There was no question about it. I wasn't going to let her walk away with something she didn't deserve. I needed a plan. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Chris Evans. Chris wasn't just my best friend. He was also a damn good lawyer. And unlike Henry Clark, who had been working for Emma, Chris was someone I could trust. I hit call and waited. It rang twice before he picked up. David. His voice was cautious. What's up? I need your help, I said, my voice steady but firm. Emma's divorcing me, and she's after my inheritance. There was a pause. Then, a low whistle. Damn, he muttered. I was hoping I'd never have to hear those words. Yeah, I said bitterly. Join the club. All right, Chris said, switching into his lawyer voice. Tell me everything. I paced the living room, explaining the situation. The unexpected phone call, the coldness in Emma's voice, the strange way Henry Clark had reacted when he saw me, and finally, the bombshell about the inheritance. Chris listened carefully, not interrupting until I finished. Then he exhaled sharply. She knew, he said. She found out about the money and timed the divorce to make sure she could get her cut. Exactly, I said. So what do I do? First things first, Chris said, his voice turning sharp. Do not put that money in your joint account. Do you hear me? If even $1 of it mixes with your shared finances, she can argue that it's marital property. I haven't touched it yet, I assured him. Good, Chris said. We're going to make sure she walks away with nothing. Hearing those words sent a surge of satisfaction through me. I had been blindsided by Emma's betrayal, but I wasn't going to let her win. Chris continued, we need to move fast. I'll file a motion to ensure that the inheritance stays separate. In the meantime, you need to be careful. Don't do anything rash. I exhaled. No promises. Chris chuckled. I mean it, man. Emma's playing dirty, but you can't let that mess with your head. You have the upper hand here, but only if you stay smart. I rubbed my forehead, exhaustion creeping in. This is insane, Chris. I thought we were happy. I stopped myself. What was the point of dwelling on it? Emma had made her decision. Chris sighed. I know, man. But look at it this way. She showed her true colors before it was too late. Now, you have the chance to take control. He was right. I could sit around feeling sorry for myself, or I could fight. I straightened my shoulders. All right, let's do this. Chris's voice was firm. I'll start the paperwork. You focus on keeping a cool head. We're gonna make sure she regrets this. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Thanks, Chris. Always, man. I hung up and exhaled. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was war, and I was ready for battle. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in days. The weight of betrayal was still there, but it wasn't crushing me anymore. It was fueling me. Emma thought she had everything under control. She thought I'd roll over, sign the divorce papers, and let her take a piece of my inheritance. She was wrong. I grabbed my phone and checked my messages. Chris had already sent over some initial documents, outlining the first steps to legally securing my inheritance as separate property. I responded with a quick got it. Let's move fast. Then, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started cleaning out my joint accounts. Chris had warned me, if a single dollar of that inheritance mixed with our shared finances, Emma could argue that it was marital property. So I didn't waste time. I transferred my personal savings to an account under my name only. I made sure my paycheck deposits were rerouted. Emma hadn't emptied our joint account yet, which told me one thing. She was waiting, probably planning to withdraw a lump sum when she thought I wouldn't notice. But I noticed, and I wasn't going to let her steal from me. With my finances secured, I moved on to my next step, gathering information. I sat at my desk, staring at our shared bills, emails, and records. I started looking through past transactions, trying to figure out exactly when Emma might have learned about the inheritance. And then, something clicked. 3 months ago, there had been an unusual charge on our shared credit card. A payment to a private investigator. I frowned. Why would Emma hire a PI? I pulled up the transaction details and saw the name of the agency. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about the inheritance. Emma had been investigating me. I had no idea what she had been looking for. Infidelity? Secret bank accounts? Was she hoping to catch me in something that would help her in the divorce? But the irony was, I hadn't done anything wrong. She was the one plotting behind my back. I grabbed my phone and dialed Chris. "Tell me you have good news," he answered. "I have something better," I said. "Emma hired a private investigator months ago." Chris whistled. Well, that's interesting. Any idea what she was looking for?" "No clue," I admitted. "But it means she was planning this for a while. She wasn't just reacting to the inheritance. She was setting this up." Chris hummed thoughtfully. "That could work in our favor. If we can prove she was manipulating the situation, it strengthens your case." I nodded, gripping my phone tighter. "Then let's find out exactly what she was up to." Chris chuckled. "Now you're thinking like a lawyer." I hung up, my mind racing. Emma had played her game well, but she had underestimated me. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought she controlled the narrative. But now, it was my turn to take control. And I wasn't just going to win. I was going to make sure she regretted ever trying to betray me. I had spent the past few days gathering everything I needed. Bank records, legal paperwork, copies of the credit card transactions. Anything that could paint a clear picture of what Emma had been doing behind my back. Every piece of evidence confirmed what I had already suspected. She had been planning this divorce long before I even knew about the inheritance. And now, it was time to confront her. I texted Emma earlier in the day, keeping it short. "David ***, we need to talk. Face to face. Tonight." Her response came quickly. "Emma ***, there's nothing left to talk about." "David ***, you sure about that? Because I know what you've been up to." There was a pause before she replied. "Emma ***, fine. 7 p.m. Our place." I stared at the message, my pulse steady. She didn't sound nervous, which meant she still believed she had the upper hand. She thought she could control this situation. She had no idea what was coming. At exactly 7 p.m., I walked into the house that used to feel like home but now felt like enemy territory. Emma was already there, sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. She barely looked at me as I entered, her expression neutral, detached. "You wanted to talk," she said flatly. "So talk." I stood in front of her, hands in my pockets, keeping my voice calm. "When were you going to tell me you hired a private investigator?" Her face barely flickered, but I caught the briefest hesitation before she responded. "What are you talking about?" I smirked, shaking my head. "Come on, Emma. Don't insult my intelligence. I went through our financial records. 3 months ago, you made a payment to a private investigation firm. I want to know why." She inhaled sharply, her mask of indifference slipping just a little. "That's none of your business." "Oh, but it is," I said, stepping closer. "Because that means you were planning this long before you even knew about the inheritance. So tell me, what were you hoping to find?" She clenched her jaw, but I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this. "Did you think I was cheating?" I pressed. "Did you think you'd find something that would make the divorce easier for you? Or were you just looking for a way to justify what you were about to do?" Her lips tightened. "I don't have to explain myself to you." I laughed, shaking my head. "No, you don't. Because the truth is already obvious. You were done with this marriage long before you filed the papers. You were just looking for an excuse. And when you found out about the inheritance, you decided to speed things up, didn't you?" Her eyes flashed with something. Anger, maybe, or frustration at being caught. You don't know what you're talking about. I know enough, I countered. I know that you thought you could take half of what isn't yours. I know you thought I'd be too blind to see what was happening. But you made one mistake, Emma. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. And what's that? You underestimated me. The room was silent for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Emma's fingers tightened around the armrest of the couch, her knuckles white. You think you're going to walk away from this with everything, don't you? She said, her voice lower now. I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. I think I'm going to make sure you don't take what doesn't belong to you. She stood up abruptly, her breath coming faster. You can't prove anything? Can't I? I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. I have the bank records, the transaction details, a paper trail that shows exactly what you were up to. And guess what, Emma? I also have legal counsel that actually gives a damn about my interests. Unlike your lawyer, who, by the way, doesn't seem too comfortable with what you're trying to pull. She froze. Henry? I smirked. Yeah, turns out even he has a conscience. And he knows this is a losing battle for you. For the first time, I saw something I hadn't seen in her before. Fear. She had played her game well, but she hadn't expected me to fight back. She had expected the old David, the one who let things slide, the one who didn't push back, the one who always trusted her. But that David was gone. I stepped back, exhaling slowly. This is your last chance, Emma. We can settle this fairly. You walk away with what you brought into this marriage, and I walk away with what's mine. She scoffed again, but her voice wavered. And if I don't? Then you lose everything, I said simply. I'll drag this through court. I'll make sure every dirty little detail of your plan comes to light. And trust me, you don't want that. She stared at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. Was it regret? Or just the realization that she had lost? Finally, she looked away. I need time to think. I nodded. Take all the time you want. But understand this. I'm not the man you thought you could manipulate. That man doesn't exist anymore. I turned and walked out the door, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The battle wasn't over, but I had just won the first round. The confrontation with Emma had gone better than I expected, but I wasn't naive enough to think she'd back down so easily. She needed time to think? No, she needed time to strategize, to figure out her next move. And so did I. The next morning, I was sipping my coffee, trying to shake off the weight of last night's conversation, when my phone rang. I frowned when I saw the caller ID. Henry Clark, Emma's lawyer. I hesitated before answering. Clark. A brief pause. Mr. Lopez, I assume you have a moment? I leaned against the counter, narrowing my eyes. Depends. What exactly are we talking about here? Another pause. Then, a quiet sigh. I wanted to speak with you privately, without Emma's involvement. There are things I believe you should know. That got my attention. My grip on the phone tightened. Go on. I don't feel comfortable with how this case has unfolded, Henry admitted, his voice lower now. Emma approached me with the divorce plan weeks ago, and at the time, I didn't question it. But after our last meeting, I started reviewing some of the details more closely. There are things about this case that don't sit right with me. I walked to the window, watching the city stretch out beneath me. You mean the part where she planned to rob me? Henry cleared his throat. Among other things. I smirked. I thought lawyers weren't supposed to have a conscience. Some of us do, he said stiffly. And some of us don't appreciate being manipulated. That was interesting. So, why are you telling me this? Henry hesitated before answering. Because I don't believe Emma has told you the whole truth. About the inheritance. About why she really wants the divorce. I froze. What are you talking about? Henry's voice lowered. I need to be careful about what I say here, but I will tell you this. Emma has been making significant financial moves in the past few months. Transactions that don't add up for someone planning a simple separation. There's something else at play here, something bigger than just the money she thinks she can take from you. My pulse quickened. You're saying she was doing more than just hiring a PI? Much more, Henry confirmed. I can't share privileged client information, but I can tell you this. She's not just walking away. She has a plan. And whatever that plan is, it's not just about divorce. A slow, cold realization settled over me. Emma hadn't just been preparing for a divorce. She had been moving money. I clenched my jaw. How do I find out exactly what she's been up to? Henry exhaled sharply. Look into your joint accounts. Look into any business dealings she's had. Anything unusual, investments, loans, sudden withdrawals. If I were you, I'd be very careful about what's coming next. Emma isn't just leaving you. She's rebuilding her life on your money. My stomach twisted. I thought I had already seen the worst of her betrayal, but this was something else. I appreciate the warning, I said, my voice tight. Henry hesitated again before speaking. Mr. Lopez, be smart about this. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. If you make the right moves, you'll come out on top. I smirked. Oh, don't worry, Clark. I have every intention of coming out on top. I ended the call and set my phone down, my mind already racing. Emma wasn't just trying to take what wasn't hers. She was hiding something. And now, I was going to find out exactly what it was. She thought she could win. She had no idea who she was up against. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, the weight of Henry's warning settling over me like a thick fog. Emma hadn't just been planning a divorce. She had been planning something bigger, something dangerous. I took Henry's advice and started digging. The deeper I went, the worse it got. Emma had been moving money. Our joint accounts had seen steady withdrawals over the past 6 months, small enough not to raise immediate suspicion, but significant enough when added together. Tens of thousands of dollars had disappeared. At first, I thought she was just stashing money away for the divorce, but then I found something worse. She had been investing, under a different name. My chest tightened as I stared at the documents I had pulled up. Emma had set up a separate business account, registered under an alias I didn't recognize at first, until I saw the listed email address. It was hers. She had been funneling our money into something off the books, something I wasn't supposed to find, and she had been doing it long before she filed for divorce. I clenched my jaw. She wasn't just trying to take half of my inheritance. She had already been stealing from me for months. I needed to move. Fast. I picked up my phone and called Chris. He answered on the first ring. Tell me you have good news. Oh, I have something, I said, my voice sharp. Emma's been moving money, setting up investments under a fake name. Chris whistled. That's fraud. Exactly, I said, and I'm going to use it against her. Chris was quiet for a moment, then he exhaled. All right, here's what we do. We take this straight to her lawyer. We make it very clear that if she pushes for anything in the divorce, we'll expose everything. I smirked. Leverage. Leverage, Chris confirmed. And trust me, she won't want this going to court. Fraud cases? That's serious. She could lose everything. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. She wanted to play dirty, I said. She thought she could win. Chris chuckled. And now? Now she's cornered. The next day, I walked into Henry Clark's office with Chris at my side. Henry was already seated, his face unreadable. Across from him, Emma sat stiffly, her arms crossed, her expression cold. I didn't waste time. I pulled out the files I had printed, the evidence of her hidden accounts, her investments, and slid them across the table toward her. Emma glanced down, but for the first time, I saw panic flash in her eyes. What is this? She asked, her voice tight. I tilted my head. Come on, Emma. Don't insult me. Her lawyer, a woman I hadn't met before, leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. Mr. Lopez, what exactly are you implying? Chris smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We're not implying anything. We're stating facts. Your client has been illegally funneling joint funds into private investments under a false identity. That's fraud. The room went silent. Emma's lawyer glanced at her sharply. Emma, is this true? Emma's face was pale now. She swallowed hard. That's not what it looks like. Oh, but it is, I said, leaning forward. And here's the deal, Emma. You drop the divorce settlement. You take what you came into this marriage with, and you walk away. If you don't, we take this to court. And trust me, you won't like what happens next. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. She had lost. Her lawyer turned to her. Emma, I strongly suggest we reconsider our approach. Emma's eyes flickered to mine, a mixture of fury and defeat swirling within them. But I didn't care. She had planned to destroy me, but I had destroyed her first. Finally, after a long silence, Emma exhaled sharply and looked away. Fine. Chris smirked. Smart choice. Henry Clark leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Well then, I believe we have an agreement. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. Pleasure doing business with you, Emma. She didn't look at me. She couldn't. I walked out of that office with my freedom, and I had never felt better. Walking out of Henry Clark's office, I felt lighter than I had in months. It was over. Emma had lost. She had tried to play the game, to manipulate me, to steal from me. But in the end, she had only played herself. Chris and I stepped outside, the sun hitting my face as I took in a deep breath of fresh air. You okay? Chris asked, stuffing his hands in his pockets. I let out a low chuckle. More than okay. We stood there for a moment, the weight of everything settling. It wasn't just about winning the legal battle. It was about getting my life back. For so long, I had been trapped in a marriage that I didn't even realize was broken. I had trusted Emma. I had built a life with her, believing we were in it together. But she had been playing a different game all along. Chris patted me on the back. I gotta say, man, that was satisfying. Seeing her face when you dropped that bomb? Priceless. I smirked. She thought she was the smartest person in the room. And now? Now she's walking away with nothing. Chris grinned. Damn right. The following weeks were a blur of legal formalities. The divorce was finalized quicker than expected. Emma didn't fight the terms. She couldn't. With the fraud evidence hanging over her, she had no leverage. She agreed to take only what she brought into the marriage. No settlement, no claim to my inheritance. She left the house, packed her things, and disappeared from my life. I thought I'd feel empty. That after years of being with someone, I'd struggle with the silence, the absence of her presence. But I didn't. Instead, the silence felt like freedom. I no longer walked into my home, feeling like I had to tiptoe around tension. I no longer had to question whether the person beside me truly had my back. For the first time in a long time, I was in control of my own life. One evening, Chris and I sat at a bar, toasting to the end of my marriage. So, Chris said, sipping his drink, what's next for you? I leaned back, swirling my glass. Honestly, I don't know. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. I had spent so much time chasing stability, trying to build something that I thought was safe. But now, I realized that life wasn't about just existing. It was about living. Chris smirked. Well, whatever's next, just don't marry another gold digger. I laughed, shaking my head. Noted. A few days later, I got a message from an unknown number. Emma, I hope you're happy. I stared at the text for a moment before deleting it. I was happy. For the first time in years, I truly was. And this was only the beginning. The day my divorce was finalized, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. I had been through hell and back, but the man looking back at me wasn't the same one who had answered that devastating phone call weeks ago. I was free, not just from Emma, not just from the legal battle, but from the version of myself that had been stuck in the past, chasing a marriage that never really existed, clinging to a life that had been built on deception. For the first time in years, I felt light. I had spent so long believing that stability meant happiness, that as long as I kept my head down, worked hard, and played it safe, everything would be fine. But now, I realized something I should have seen a long time ago. Life doesn't reward the ones who stay comfortable. It rewards those who take control. A month later, I sold the house. Too many memories were tied to it. Good ones, bad ones, all of them tangled together in a way that I didn't want to keep carrying. Emma had left, but the ghost of our relationship still lingered in the walls. I didn't need that. I needed a fresh start. So I packed up what little I wanted to keep, signed the final paperwork, and walked away from the place that had once been my home. And just like that, I was truly free. With the divorce behind me, I focused on rebuilding. Chris had been right. Winning wasn't just about making sure Emma got nothing. It was about making sure I got everything I deserved. I used part of my inheritance to invest in myself. For years, I had been stuck in a job I didn't care about, going through the motions. That ended now. I took courses, met with business advisors, and finally started working on a project that actually meant something to me. I had money. I had knowledge. And now, I had purpose. And damn, it felt good. One evening, I was sitting at a cafe, enjoying the quiet, when a woman sat down at the table across from me. She had a kind smile, bright eyes, and a confidence that caught me off guard. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, holding a coffee in her hand. I looked up, meeting her gaze. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking at someone with suspicion or fear of betrayal. I was just interested. I smiled. Not at all. And just like that, a new chapter began. Emma had tried to break me. She had tried to take what wasn't hers, tried to tear me down, thinking I would never recover. But I did. I came out of this stronger, smarter, and ready for whatever came next. Because life wasn't about holding on to the past. It was about building the future. And I was just getting started.